Big ideas, real research, simple explanations. This is the Cause and Effect Show. We take important policy research and make it clear, fast, and easy to understand. The cause and the effect. Let's get started. What if the most powerful technology of our lifetime didn't make the rich richer, but instead gave everyone else a ladder?
You mean instead of widening the gap, it shrinks it?
Exactly. For decades, new technology has mostly rewarded people with more education, more degrees, more pay. But this new paper asks a bold question. What if generative AI flips that script?
That's the big tension, right? Historically, technology has favored highly educated work, but now we've got tools that can write, summarize, analyze data, things that used to require years of schooling.
And that's what makes this study so important. It doesn't just theorize about it. It runs a randomized experiment to see whether AI actually narrows education-based productivity gaps.
So this isn't speculation. They directly test whether AI shrinks the gap between people with different levels of education.
They did. The new paper by Guillermo Cruces and his co-authors doesn't just speculate. The authors ran a large randomized experiment to test it directly.
So this isn't observational data from a firm. They actually randomized access to AI?
Exactly. They recruited 1,174 adults in Argentina between ages 25 and 45. Importantly, they split participants into two groups: lower education, basically high school or less than half of a college program, and higher education, more than half of a post-secondary program completed.
So they're deliberately comparing people with meaningfully different formal education levels.
Right, and then they had everyone complete the same business problem-solving task. Think, your boss emails you about a company problem. You're given a report with text, a table, and a graph. You have to diagnose the problem and propose a solution.
So it's not trivia. It's reading comprehension, reasoning, structured writing, all the things we associate with formal education.
Exactly. And here's the key. Half of participants were randomly given access to a GPT 4.1 based assistant embedded in the platform. The other half had to do it on their own.
So clean identification, same task, same incentives. Only difference is AI access.
That's right, and the results are striking.
Let's start with the baseline. Without AI, how big was the education gap?
Pretty large. Higher education participants outperformed lower education participants by 0.548 standard deviations.
Put that in plain English.
Imagine lining up scores on a bell curve. The average higher education participant was more than half a standard deviation ahead. That's a meaningful productivity gap.
Okay, now introduce AI.
AI raised performance for everyone, but it raised it much more for the lower education group.
How much more?
For lower education participants, AI increased performance by 1.242 standard deviations. For higher education participants, the gain was 0.834 standard deviations.
So both groups benefit, but the lower education group benefits more.
Exactly. And when you recalculate the education gap with AI access, it shrinks dramatically, from 0.548 standard deviations down to just 0.139.
So AI closes roughly 3/4 of the original productivity gap.
About 75%, yes.
That's a huge compression.
It is, but it's important to be precise. The gap doesn't disappear entirely. Higher education participants with AI still slightly outperform lower education participants with AI.
So AI narrows differences in execution, but it doesn't erase differences in underlying skill.
That's exactly how the authors interpret it. They make a distinction between underlying human capital and effective task productivity. Education builds reasoning ability, structured communication, and experience with complex problems. AI can substitute for some of those cognitive inputs, especially the ones that are more binding for lower education individuals.
In other words, if writing structure and organizing arguments are the bottlenecks, AI helps most where those bottlenecks are tightest.
Right. It's not that education stops mattering, it's that AI reduces how much that difference shows up in task execution.
What about speed? Did AI just help people do it faster?
It did reduce completion time slightly for both groups, around 1 minute on a roughly 10 to 11 minute task. But interestingly, time savings weren't the main story. The real effect was quality improvement.
And they measured quality carefully?
Very carefully. They used a pre-registered rubric scoring content and writing, validated the grading with multiple language models, and even had human graders cross-check a sample. The results are robust across methods.
I'm curious about something deeper. If AI helps you complete a task, does that mean you actually understand it, or are you just outsourcing thinking?
Great question. The researchers tested that. After the main task, everyone, regardless of treatment, had to answer follow-up questions without AI. These tested whether participants could articulate the root cause and interpret the data on their own.
So this isolates whether AI use builds understanding or creates dependency.
Exactly. And here's what they found. Lower education participants who had AI during the task performed modestly better in the follow-up without AI. Higher education participants showed no significant change.
So no evidence that AI made people worse off cognitively.
Correct. And importantly, the education gap largely remained in the no AI follow-up. That suggests underlying human capital differences still matter when the tool is removed.
So the pattern is consistent. AI compresses performance while it's available, but skills still matter underneath.
That's the key takeaway.
What about how people used the AI? Did usage patterns differ?
Yes. Both groups used it at high rates. Over 80% of treated distributed participants engaged with it, but higher education users tended to prompt more strategically. They gave more structured instructions and were more likely to integrate AI output with their own writing instead of copying it wholesale.
So higher education participants used AI as a complement. Lower education participants leaned more towards substitution.
That's a fair characterization.
Stepping back, what does this mean for inequality?
At the task level, generative AI appears skill leveling. When people with different education levels perform the same work with equal AI access, productivity differences shrink substantially.
But translating that into wages depends on firms, hiring practices, and who actually gets access.
Exactly. The experiment isolates the direct productivity effect. It doesn't model promotions, labor demand shifts, or equilibrium wage changes.
Still, it's foundational. If AI reduces execution gaps, then access becomes crucial.
That's the big implication. If generative AI tools are broadly available, they may expand opportunities for people who historically faced binding skill constraints in certain tasks.
Which means the real dividing line might not just be education anymore. It might be access and effective use of AI tools.
And that has direct implications for income, mobility, and cost of living. If AI allows more people to perform higher value tasks, that could expand economic opportunity, provided institutions don't bottleneck it.
So the future of inequality might hinge less on who has the diploma and more on who can effectively harness the tool.
That's what this evidence suggests.
And that's a very different trajectory than previous waves of technology, which often widened gaps.
Exactly. This time, at least in this controlled setting, the technology compresses differences rather than amplifies them.
Which means the next chapter of economic opportunity may depend on how widely and effectively we integrate these tools into everyday work.
And whether that integration expands human potential or concentrates it.
Our goal with this channel is simple. Take real causal research and make it easy to understand. If that's something you want more of, subscribing is the single biggest help. Please hit like, leave a comment, and check out the rest of the channel. We have more insights like this coming out every week.